Hello from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dr. Irem Uygur. I'm a robotics engineer. I worked on various autonomous systems and today I'll be talking about them. Basically, I will talk about my journey in robotics and how fast things change and robotics place in society. So I want to start by the question, when you hear the word robot, what comes to your mind? Well, for me, this answer has changed a lot. Um, when I was a child, a robot was something I could only see on cartoons on the TV. It was not something real. It was some fictional character. But obviously, during my studies, this has changed. Um, During my undergraduate studies, I had internship at the University of Glasgow in Scotland, and they had a EU project for cloth folding robot. And so I had internship on this robot, and it was the first robot I have ever seen in my life. And I remember being intimidated. This robot was huge, it was very strong. It was in a cage, so it was dangerous to be around this robot and we couldn't go near it. And afterwards, during my master's studies at the Technical University of Munich in Germany, this is when I decided to focus on robotics in my studies, and I found opportunities to work on various research projects. And now the robots I worked on included a human-sized humanoid robot, a drone, a robot arm that can be guided by the touch, and it was not in a cage like the previous robot arm in Glasgow I mentioned, and another robot arm that is also not in a cage and is attached to a base and it can go around the room. And I remember in that time that autonomous cars were very popular. It was a new hype in the media. And I was also very excited about it. And I had my master thesis on trajectory planning for autonomous cars, in fact. And I remember in that point, one of the largest international robotic conferences in the world was held in Germany. And there was a protest outside of this conference, and protesters were protesting robots, and they were saying that the robots will steal their jobs, so they don't want robots. Well, and I think that time it was also a common narrative as well in Germany, at least, that this robot stealing jobs, because I was also asked about it, and I have to say that I had mixed feelings about it, about what I'm studying and what I'm working on. And after finishing my master's studies in Germany, I returned to my home country, Turkey. And there, my uncle was a principal of a school for visually impaired children, and he invited me to New Year's Eve party in this school. So I went there, and there it was the first time in my life I think I witnessed the navigation challenges of visually impaired children inside of their own school. And I kind of wondered, like, what is the point of working on all these projects, on those robot projects with the humanoid or a car or a robot arm that can go around? Like, what's the point? Why are we working on those instead of helping these people who are having challenges in their daily lives? And or is the point stealing jobs? So what's the point? And I think maybe I should give a background here that the navigation systems among they do not differ so much. So the basic principles are at least very similar, same. So anyway, so I decided to want to work on it. So after this experience, I decided to have my PhD on this topic. So I went to Japan, to University of Tokyo, to work on navigation for handheld devices. And I focused on indoor navigation because GPS signal can be used in outdoor navigation, for navigation, but GPS signal doesn't work indoors. For that reason, indoor navigation can be a bigger challenge. And well, then you have to obtain this information by using a different sensors. But the problem there is then you obtain a big amount of data that you cannot process this amount of data in a small handheld device at that point. You can only process it in some really strong big computers, and obviously no one can go around carrying a big computer, so there wasn't really a practical solution. But I have to say that by the end of my PhDs, the world has changed a lot, because now you could see autonomous robots operating in human environments. Well, you could see a security robot patrolling in the Tokyo station, or you could see autonomous food serving waiter robots serving food in some restaurant chains in Tokyo. So now there's like a very big shift, because if you remember, in my first robot I witnessed in my studies was in a cage. It wasn't moving, and it was dangerous to be around it. It was very far from operating in a human environment, and also it was not really meant to work in a human environment anyway. But still, like, the shift was a lot. Any other robot I've seen before, I've only seen it in a research laboratory where environment is very constrained. And even though not all those robots were in a cage, they could still do something unpredictable, and that could be dangerous while they're operating. But these robots that are deployed outside, operating in a human environment, not creating any danger for others, was like actually a big thing. And well, this has happened because, well, technology developed in a very fast pace in that time. And I feel like maybe this is the right time for me to say that in media I sometimes see this confusion of between AI and robotics. They're used as if they're the same thing when they are not. Robotics is an interdisciplinary field. Robots have a hardware, they have sensors, actuators, and AI is part of it. Yes, they also have AI, but AI is something they have more in the application level, mostly. And so a lot of what I just counted just improved, and that's how we could have these robots. It's true that we have now, maybe there's more research, better algorithms, but we also have stronger systems now. The sensors got smaller, lighter, their quality improved, and then the computers got stronger, and now we could process large amount of data. And now there was also cloud computing, right? So again, there was a lot of developments that happened in different fields that made this change, a big change in robotics, to become possible. And well, that felt fast, even for me actually, despite of that point still studying robotics. And at that point, of course, that I graduated from my PhD and I started to work at a Japanese robotics company. And this company operates basically in the service robotics. They have various robots, such as autonomous delivery robot, like a warehouse robot, or different autonomous mobile robots that are for different industries, for different tasks, in different sizes. Anyway, in this company, my first task was actually to work on a navigation system aimed at visually impaired people. And this navigation system was planned to be operating outdoor and indoor, so I was very excited about it. And what is even nicer about it is that they wanted to use already existing technology as a part of their autonomous delivery robots, take it and apply it to this new visually impaired people navigation application that I want to develop. And my task was to develop the prototype of the navigation module, and I have developed this. And then this navigation application, of course, was later on developed even further and commercialized as well. And during all these developments that I want to mention, I think the three interesting things that I observed. The first one is that the reaction of other engineers, I think. So when I was working on this project, there were other engineers that are not even part of this project that volunteered to actually contribute. And I know the engineers who are working for this part as a part of this project wanted to work even outside of maybe work hours, volunteering to do that, because they simply just because that they found this project very meaningful. And the second thing is that that I observed is that it turned out that it's not only visually impaired people who needs this, who needs a navigation assistance inside of buildings. There are other groups of people in Japan that they also want this assistance. I guess for a background, I should say that in Tokyo, it's very common to have large indoor areas basically that are very complex and it's very difficult to find your way. I guess the examples can be like auto parks and some shopping malls, and I think the subways, like metro stations basically. There are some of them are just huge. And later on I found out that this is actually a very common case. Once assistive technology is developed, it's very common that other groups of people who are not the initial target of this technology also start using it, and eventually this technology becomes part of daily life. I guess a very common example of it is audiobooks, for example. So, and the third thing that was interesting is that my next task, which was to apply the newly developed technology for this navigation application back to autonomous delivery robot. So initially, autonomous delivery robots technology fed the navigation applications technology, but then later on this newly developed technology of this navigation app was now asked to feed the core business, which is the autonomous delivery robot. Well, the reason to do that was to basically make our autonomous delivery robot even more autonomous by using this new technology. So I want to say that, like, when you have a robot, you expect it to be as autonomous as possible. More autonomous the better. So by improving the autonomy level of this delivery robot, that we could improve the operations and improve the service quality, and also to qualify for the certain certifications basically. I think this dual purpose innovation was kind of showed us that how a business can create basically a win-win situation by adopting technology for a broader societal challenges basically. And I want to say that at that point I didn't know it, but by learning more about business and societal impact, later on I found that those three things I counted as exactly the most ideal case for regarding business and societal impact basically. And you might wonder, what happened to the robots stealing people's job? Is it still not true? What has changed there? Because everything I think so far I talked about was about maybe more was in the scope of accessibility and maybe making some opportunities possible for people. But how about stealing job narrative? What happened to it? Well, I want to say that like I cannot speak for everywhere. I think I can speak mostly for Japan, and so what happens is that basically that afterwards I worked on different various robotic projects, including delivery robot, warehouse, other service robotic. They're all autonomous, and I got to learn more about Japan as well. And the first thing is that Japan has an approaching logistic crisis that you can hear about it in the news. The second one is that in the rural areas of Japan, what happens is that basically that there are many manufacturing places, there are factories, and they can't find young people to work for them, and basically that this is those business to stay in the business, to be able to continue their operations and manufacturing, that they have to automate their factories. So basically that there is this need for robots in Japan, and that's actually accepted by society as well. You don't really hear the narrative for robots stealing jobs. I think first is that maybe in the culture, in the animes, and robot is always there and something to help people. It's something positive actually, and people from very young age I think have this very positive impression. And I guess the second one is that I think this logistic crisis and the rural areas not having the population, not having young people, and they still have the factories to operate, though I think these problems are evident to society and you can see them on the news. So I think for that reason this robot stealing jobs is not really within the conversation in Japan. And what I want to leave with you today is that the world is changing very rapidly. I hope my small journey in robotics kinda showed that as well. Even if you are inside of it, it still feels very fast and surprisingly fast. And just a few years ago, what was not imaginable just becomes possible today. And for that reason, I think it's very important to not just to follow technology, but I guess also to reimagine where these technologies can be used. And the second point is that robotics will not just reshape the industries, but I think it's very important to include this narrative that they will also redefine accessibility and opportunity, and I think it's very important to acknowledge that. And today I wanted to share a bit of a different narrative than the familiar story of the robots stealing jobs. And it is true that robots will replace, but it's also true that it's not always a bad thing. And it's also true that they will not just replace, but they will also empower. So thank you for listening.